Can they change? Capacity is not the same as desire. I'll come back to that word, capacity, multiple times throughout this video and define it clearly. I want to change, they say. A person can sincerely mean that sentence and still lack the current capacity to produce a different outcome. Desire is meaningful. Desire is not capacity. And neither one by itself establishes what will be safe for you. Today, I'm going to give you 7 questions that separate a promise from evidence. Not 7 ways to diagnose somebody, 7 ways to observe what actually develops after the promise. You may have heard, I want to change after a painful argument, a betrayal, another broken agreement, or the moment the relationship was finally about to end. You may have believed it because the person looked sincere. They sounded sincere. They behaved sincere. The same pattern returned, though. So, were they lying? The real answer is maybe, but not necessarily. This is the final episode in Same Behavior, Different Mind, Cluster B Behaviors and Patterns. We've spent this series asking what different psychological functions might lie underneath familiar relationship behaviors. This last question brings the work back to you so you can decide what supports your trust, your safety, your boundaries, and access to you. The way I'm using desire here is simple. Desire is the person's genuine wish or intention for a different outcome. Capacity is their current ability to use the necessary skills, treatment, support, and self control under real conditions, especially when they're stressed. So let's go back to Alex and Casey. Alex and Casey have a clear agreement. Conflict will not include insults. But when Alex feels frustrated, Alex repeatedly uses contemptuous sarcasm and name calling. This example doesn't include violence or threats. After the latest conflict, Alex says, I want to change. I hate that I keep doing this. I don't want to hurt you again. Sounds sincere, right? For this example, assume the desire is sincere. That carries emotional weight, but it doesn't answer the next question, the important one. Can Alex do something different when the same stress returns? That's what capacity asks. Knowing what happened is not the same as understanding why it happened. And understanding why is not the same as wanting a different result. And wanting a different result is not the same as being able to produce it under stress. Alex may be able to say, I insulted you, without understanding what drives the response. Alex may begin to understand the response and still be unable to interrupt it. Capacity becomes visible when Alex can use another response while the relationship is emotionally difficult. Vaknin makes a useful distinction here, and it goes like this. Narcissistic people may be aware of what they do and partly aware of the effect on other people while having less awareness of the motivations and psychological processes driving the behavior. In other words, I know I insulted you is not the same as they're saying, I understand why I reach for contempt when I feel threatened. And even that understanding is not the same as being able to stop the behavior under pressure. Very important. Lack of sustained change doesn't prove the original desire was fake. You don't have to read private sincerity in order to assess what's happening. You can leave sincerity, or rather, sincerity uncertain. You can leave sincerity uncertain and still evaluate capacity, conduct, and outcome. In other words, sincerity and the result that you get in the relationship that you can observe is completely separate. They can be sincere and have the outcomes that are not connected. A behavior can be painful for the relationship and still be useful to the person doing it. What could that look like? Contempt may quickly end a conversation. Alex doesn't want to leave. Blame may move attention away from Alex's conduct. Withdrawal may make Casey pursue and reassure. A dramatic apology may stop Casey from leaving before Alex has made any practical change. If the old behavior still produces relief, control, attention, escape, or another reward, part of the person may want to change or may want change while another part keeps selecting the strategy that works fastest. Vecni describes self justifying reframing as one barrier. A person may recast harmful conduct as honesty, strength, self protection, or even something altruistic. Think about that. Vecni argues that perceived rewards can weaken motivation when the person experiences the pattern as an advantage rather than a problem. It doesn't prove Alex has a particular diagnosis, it gives us one possible mechanism. If Alex describes every insult as just telling the truth, they insult and they say, I'm just being honest, then Alex may be naming the behavior without yet questioning the story that authorizes it. So the question isn't only, do they want the pain to stop? What pain? Which pain? Do they want to stop causing harm? Or do they mainly want the consequences of the harm to disappear? Do they want the change? Do they want to change the pattern? Or do they want you to restore closeness so they no longer have to feel the loss? These possibilities can coexist. We don't need to pretend we know which one is privately true. We don't need to mind read. We need to watch what the person becomes willing and able to do, what they demonstrate they're willing and able to do. I want to give you 7 questions you can ask to help you get the evidence so that you know what to do. These questions make distinctions and delineations. They're not made to diagnose anybody. Don't do that. You use these questions to keep different kinds of evidence from collapsing into one promise. Question number 1. Can they name the behavior and its impact? Not, I made mistakes. Not, we both got toxic. None of that. Can Alex say, I called you names after we agreed that insults were off limits? I used contempt to shut down the conversation. That hurt you and made conflict feel unsafe. Can they ask that question? Can they answer that question? Naming requires specificity. It tells you whether the person can look at the behavior without hiding it inside vague language or immediate blame. Specific naming is stronger evidence because a it gives the work a clear target. A person who can't yet describe the behavior this precisely may still begin through direct observation, collaborative work, or qualified assessment. Question number 2. Can they understand without turning explanation into excuse? Here's what I mean. Alex may discover that criticism triggers shame. That explanation can help Alex recognize the moment before contempt takes over, but the explanation must not become, I insulted you because you triggered me. Understanding the mechanism doesn't transfer responsibility to Casey. The book Oil and E joins authority and responsibility. If you hold authority over your choices, you also hold responsibility for consequences of those choices. The useful version sounds like this. When I feel ashamed, I become defensive and reach for contempt. That reaction is mine to address. You did not make me insult you. Now, insight is supporting accountability instead of replacing it. Question number 3 is, do they want change enough to accept its costs? Wanting the relationship back isn't necessarily wanting the work. Change may cost Alex the immediate relief of winning the argument. It may require admitting harm without controlling Casey's response. It may require tolerating distance, attending treatment, practicing an unfamiliar skill, or accepting that trust returns slowly, if it returns at all. Desire becomes more informative when the person accepts the cost attached to it. Vecning's point about perceived rewards belongs here. If contempt still feels effective and Alex still regards it as strength, then Alex may want Casey to stay without yet wanting to surrender the strategy that keeps producing short term relief. Again, that doesn't tell us the desire is fake. It tells us the desire is competing with another incentive. Question number 4. Are resources and access becoming real? For example, saying, I need help is different from seeking appropriate help. Seeking help is different from having access to it. Having access is different from attending, and attending is different from using what is learned. Those delineations, distinctions protect against two unfair conclusions. A person who can't access treatment doesn't automatically lack desire. A person who attends treatment doesn't automatically have the capacity to use it under stress. The appropriate help depends on the actual problem. What you're observing is whether support becomes accessible and whether the person can use it. Casey isn't the treatment plan. The book OLNE distinguishes empowerment from enablement and keeps each person's needs, choices, and responsibilities separate. Support can be voluntary. It can't turn Casey into Alex's therapist or make Casey responsible for producing Alex's change. Question number 5. Can they use what they learn under stress? This is where knowledge becomes capacity. Alex may explain the entire pattern beautifully on a calm Sunday morning. Then real test arrives when Alex feels criticized on Thursday night. Can Alex notice the escalation? Can Alex say, I'm getting defensive and I need 20 minutes? Can Alex take the pause without using silence as punishment? Can Alex return at the agreed time? Can Alex speak without contempt? Capacity becomes visible in the conditions that use to activate the behavior. Not perfectly and not all at once, but concretely, observably. The idea of character in the book OLNE describes it as consistency between stated values and actual behavior, especially when circumstances become difficult. This is also where internal progress and observable behavior become, or they have to stay separate. Vecnin argues that in cluster B conditions, internal healing and behavior modifications can come apart. Vecnin also says behavior modification is possible even when a diagnosis remains. Research supports the practical need to watch more than one outcome. Long-term borderline personality disorder studies found symptom remission more often than broader recovery that also included social and vocational functioning. For narcissistic personality disorder, 8 selected improved cases document that change is possible while broader evidence about what works remains mostly lacking. The research doesn't predict Alex, it helps us avoid two mistakes. Assuming internal relief automatically changes relationship behavior, and dismissing safer conduct because we can't prove deep structural change. If Alex stops insulting Casey, takes a pause, returns to the conversation, accepts responsibility, and repairs setbacks, that change is relationally meaningful. It still doesn't automatically restore trust. Trust is a separate decision built from repeated evidence in Casey's actual situation. The difficult moment doesn't reveal everything about a person. It does reveal whether the new value has begun to influence conduct when it's costly. Question number 6, does the new behavior repeat? And what happens after a setback? One good conversation is evidence. It's not yet a pattern. A pattern requires repetition across time and across more than one easy circumstance. There's no universal number of days, arguments, or therapy sessions that proves durable change. Context determines how much evidence you need and what risks you can reasonably accept. And setbacks need careful reading. A setback doesn't erase every piece of progress. It also doesn't erase the harm that just occurred. What does Alex do next? Do they deny it? Does Alex blame Casey? Do they demand credit for previous improvement? Or do they name the lapse, stop the behavior, repair what can be repaired, revise the plan, and return to safer conduct? When an approach produces an outcome that doesn't work, learning requires changing the approach or abandoning the faulty design. The book Olani makes a similar point. Outcomes help us recognize what didn't work and learn from it. An apology after every identical incident isn't the same as learning. Repair should eventually alter what happens before the next injury, not only what is said after it. Question 7 is the result safer and more workable for the other person? This is the question that keeps the entire framework relational. Alex may feel more self aware. Alex may feel less ashamed. Alex may be proud of attending therapy. The experiences can be real and important. But what is Casey living with? Are insults becoming less frequent and less severe? Does Alex stop sooner? Does Alex respect a pause? Can Casey disagree without being punished? Does repair reduce the likelihood of repetition? Is Casey becoming more able to speak honestly or more careful, silent, and afraid? The outcome for Casey isn't the only measure of Alex's internal progress, it's necessary evidence for Casey's relationship decision. Forgiveness, trust, reconciliation, closeness, and access are all separate decisions. Improvement doesn't entitle Alex to any of them. Casey can acknowledge progress and still decide the relationship cannot continue. Casey can allow limited contact without restoring full trust. Casey can wait. Casey can leave. Whatever Casey's private reasons may be, Casey retains authority over participation. If the situation includes coercion, threats, stalking, sexual coercion, confinement, violence, or credible danger, stop using this framework as a relationship exercise and stop right away. Prioritize safety and confidential support. You don't owe another opportunity or confrontation or repair process before protecting yourself. Remember that. The 7 questions aren't asking you to become an investigator of another person's soul. They don't authorize surveillance, secret testing, or covert evidence gathering. What they're asking is for you to keep categories separate. They name the behavior good. Can they understand it without excusing it? They understand it good. Do they want change enough to accept its cost? They want it good. Can they access and use support? They're using support? Good. Does the behavior change when stress returns? The behavior changes. Good. Does it repeat? And does repair become more effective after setbacks? There's progress. Good. Is the actual relationship becoming safer and more workable for you? Each answer has value. No answer automatically proves the next one. The same sentence, I want to change. It doesn't identify the mechanism, the person's current capacity, or what will happen next. It can lead to very different outcomes across people and across conditions. So you don't need one universal answer to can they change? You need the answer that the evidence supports today. Maybe the evidence supports cautious hope. Maybe it supports limited access. Maybe it supports compassion without reconciliation. Maybe it supports distance. And maybe the evidence changes later. If it does, you can respond to new evidence. You don't have to grant trust in advance in order to prove that you believe in human change. Desire deserves to be heard. They can be genuine. Capacity has to be demonstrated. Repeated behavior has to be observed. Repair has to affect the pattern. And your safety, your boundaries, your trust, and your access remains yours to decide. I appreciate you having the capacity to watch this video. I'm Ron John. I'll see you in the next episode. I'll see you in the next series. Bye.
Tell me how comfort learn your name, whether silence means safety or someone went away. Tell me what love looked like before it looked like me. I keep reaching for the outline, but I want the thing I see, where your body closes, where your hope begins. I'm learning the weather under your skin. I don't want the person I invented in the dark. I want your particularities, every strange and living part. I want your particularities, not the ache, not the mask. I want the way you open and the shape of what you ask. Tell me what you carry when the world felt cold, what you never say out loud, what you only hold. Tell me how you hear me when my words come out wrong. What kind of touch is easy, what kind of touch is gone, where your body closes, where your hope begins. I'm learning the weather under your skin. I don't want the person I invented in the dark. I want your particularities, every strange and living part. I want your particularities, not the ache, not the mask. I want the way you open and the shape of what you ask. If I love you, let me learn you, slow and true and bare, the map of every caution, the names of what you fear. If I love you, let me meet you, new each day, each time. Not a borrowed little fantasy, but the real shape of your life. I don't want the person I